Namaste, Jai Shri Ram, Vande Mataram. So we are again back with another book reading session. So today we have two guests with us who will be reading the book. Neither will first read the book. So today we are having a very interesting book that we will read. The book's name is, let me put it on stage, The Corporate Life of Ancient India. So first, let me give a little bit of intro to the book itself. We found the book on the archive.org. So
I can also give an introduction to it if you want.
yeah. So that's what I will be doing. Okay. So yeah. You do the intro, correct? Okay. You do the intro, and then I'll be there. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Welcome to all our viewers. So, today we'll be reading the book Corporate Life in Ancient India by Ramesh Chandra Majumdar. This book basically it explores all the overlooked aspects of Indian economic life and in their role in Indian society. We commonly believe that India lacks in corporate and economic institutions in the past, but this book seeks to challenge that view that India had fairly developed and quite advanced institutions also in the past, as well comparable to the present. So it delves into how this corporate spirit, which is a human instinct, manifested in various social spheres like the economic sphere, the social sphere, the political sphere, and they go into various. R.C. Majumdar goes into various aspects of the corporate spirit. For example, he discusses the guilds, he discusses the Buddhist monastic communities, that is sanghas, he even discusses the caste system. So, yeah, overall, it is about challenging the notion that India had a India did not have a corporate spirit in its ancient past. Upendra, you can take over.
I think we can start reading now.
Yeah, okay, we'll start reading then. So, the first chapter of this book is corporate activities in economic life. So, this subsection is called Corporate Spirit, a Human Instinct. The spirit of cooperation is a social instinct in man. From the most primitive period of which we possess any record, it has been manifest in human society in some form or other. Nevertheless, it is brought into prominent activity and lends itself to some conscious organization according to the temper of man and the circumstances in which he finds himself. The nature of these circumstances dictates the form of such organization, but the character of its development depends to a great degree upon the peculiar genius of the society in which it is fostered. Thus, it is that we find in almost all ages and countries cooperative organization, howsoever rudimentary, in different fields of human activity social, political, religious, and economic. The development of this organization has, however, varied in different parts of the world. So, in essence, the meaning of corporate in this is that the spirit of cooperation, where people come together and form institutions that are that basically work towards the betterment of society, or you can say the individual groups in general.
It's
Its early
basically
manifestation.
ancient definition
Yes,
of capitalism, I think.
yes, or you can just say self-interest in some way. Its early manifestation in India. In ancient India, corporate activity seems to have been manifest in a marked degree, first in the one second, econ, the economic field. This appears from a passage in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad when read along with Shankaracharya's commentary thereon. We are told that on the analogy of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras in human society, Brahma created similar classes among the gods, but he was not content by bringing into existence the first two classes alone, because they could not acquire wealth. Hence were created the Vaishyas, who were called Ganashaha, owing to the circumstance that it was by cooperation and not by individual effort that they could acquire wealth. The passage thus clearly refers to a fairly developed form of corporate activity in economic life as early as the early Vedic period, later Vedic period. It is to be observed further that the author speaks of the Gana or corporate organization only in the case of the Vaishyas, and in a manner it distinctly denies it to the upper two classes. It is not unreasonable to infer from this circumstance that the corporate organization among the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas, that is of religious and political character, had not yet assumed as great an importance as that in economic life. Yes. So, Shekhar, did you have any thoughts on this?
Mm, Not much per se, because he is defining that economic life played more important role in ancient times than let's say how we see from today's generation. Like we would think that the political power would be more more powerful in the sense than economic
Yes.
activities or economic power, but it is the reverse per se.
Yeah, and there was a specific class specifically made to in the theology. Specifically, they made a class that would work towards corporate interests that infers from the economy, basically.
Yeah, the merchant class, yes,
Yeah.
basically.
So I'll move on. Corporate organization of traders. It is easy to understand how in ancient India, cooperation of a certain kind among traders was a necessity forced upon them by the insecurity of the times. Often having long distances and insecure roads to traverse, they could individually be no match for robbers or hostile tribes, but they could, when united in a body, oppose a successful resistance to the latter. The existence of such dangers is specifically referred to in later literature. Thus, a Jataka story refers to a village of 500 robbers with an elder at their head. Such organization of robbers was met by the counter-organization of traders, to which, again, reference is made in a number of Jataka stories. It is quite in the nature of things that organization of mercantile classes was brought into existence by a similar process even in earlier periods of Indian history, and evidences are not altogether wanting in support of this. The term "ani", which occurs several times in the Rig Veda, has been differently interpreted by different scholars. The St. Petersburg Dictionary derives it from the root "pan", to barter, and explains it as a merchant trader. Simmer and Ludwig also take the word in sense of the merchant. Now,
They would
in a
basically
search,
form merchant
yes,
caravans, no, to be able to protect themselves, which would
yeah,
turn
and they would arm
in the later
themselves.
form. Yes, yes, and they would form guilds on later on, I think.
Yeah, this like looking for self-interest among trader groups eventually made it guilds, basically. Yeah, so I'll continue. Now, In a certain hymn, the gods are asked to attack the Panis, who are referred to as being defeated with slaughter. Ludwig thinks that these references to fights with Panis are to be explained by their having been aboriginal traders who went in caravans, as in Arabia and northern Africa, prepared to fight if need be to protect their goods against attacks which the Aryans would naturally deem quite justified. Though I think this is more from a time when Aryan invasion theory was accepted. If we accept this
Hmm.
meaning, we shall have necessarily to presume a corporation of merchants strong enough to defy their opponents and carry on fight against them. Thus, the inscription referred to in the Jatakas may be traced back to the period represented by the hymns of the Rig Veda, system of not guild specifically, but basically people coming together as traders in groups. Is it goes all the way back to the Rig Veda.
Yeah, mutual interest would force them to come together.
Yes. Then corporate organization of artisans. To the same class belongs the corporate organization of artisans, although probably somewhat different in nature and origin. It is difficult to determine without any amount of definiteness whether these institutions, corresponding to guilds of medieval Europe, had developed in the early Vedic period. At present, the sole evidence on this point consists of the use of the word Shreshthi and Gana in Vedic literature. So, it is well known that the word Shreshthi in later literature denoted the headman of a guild. Doctor MacDonald remarks that the word may have already have that sense in the Vedic literature. Again, the word Gana means any corporate organization, although in later literature it is almost exclusively used with reference to political and religious bodies. Roth, however, points out that this is used in the sense of a guild in Vedic literature. In view of the passage from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad quoted above, the views of Roth and MacDonald seem very probable, if not altogether certain. It may be thus laid down with some amount of confidence that corporate activity in economic life was a factor in Indian society, probably from the early Vedic, and in any case, certainly from the later Vedic period. We shall not probably be far wrong if we refer to the first I believe that this book was written even before they made the find of the Indus Valley civilization new, relatively.
It was in 1922, I think. Published. This book was published in 1922.
Yeah, 1920s. And I think they found Harappa and Mohenjo-daro in 30s, right? I think so. It was 30s.
We'll have to
So
confirm.
yeah, we can move on to the next. Yeah, yeah. We can move on to the next part. So the nature, organization, and importance of guilds. This corporate activity seems to be quite a common feature in the economic system of
Yeah,
post-Vedic period.
uh, the
Yes?
Indus Valley was discovered in 1921. So this was published just a year later.
Okay. So it was just around that time. All right, all right. So he might have missed that.
Some
There might have not been
some
enough
sites were,
research for.
yeah, the some sites were in 1921. They were discovered, and the major sites were discovered in 1924. I think the major sites were.
Okay. So yeah, at that point he would have not had enough research on it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. A close study of the literature of this period clearly indicates that men following similar means of livelihood usually formed themselves into a corporation with definite rules to guide themselves. Thus, we find it stated in the Dharma Sutra of Gautama that the additional occupations of a Vaishya are agriculture, trade, tending cattle, and lending money with interest. This list must be taken to include at least all the important occupations of the people at large that were within the purview of the writer. And so it becomes significant when he says in the very next chapter that cultivators, traders, herdsmen, money lenders, and artisans have authority to lay down rules for their respective classes, having learned the state of affairs from those who in each case have authority to speak, he shall give the legal decision. This means that typically all the different branches of occupations mentioned above had some sort of definite organization. This organization must be looked upon as an important one inasmuch as its rules were recognized as valid in the eye of law and its representatives had a right to be consulted by the king in any affair that concerned it. The particular term used to denote the corporation of tradesmen or mechanics is shreni. This is defined as a corporation of people belonging to the same or different caste but following the same trade and industry. So, this organization corresponds to that of the guilds in medieval Europe and may be freely rendered by that term. Ancient literature, both Buddhist and Brahminical, as well as ancient inscriptions, contains frequent references to guilds and corroborate the inference we have deduced from the Gautama Dharma Sutra that nearly all the important branches of industry form themselves into guilds. The number of these guilds must have differed considerably, and not only in different periods, but also in different localities. In the Mugapakha Jataka, the king, while going out in full splendor of state, is said to have assembled the four castes, the 18 guilds, and his whole army. This indicates conventional number of different kinds of guilds in a state was set down as 18. It is not possible to determine what these conventional 18 guilds were, but we get a considerably larger number by collecting together all scattered references in literature and inscriptions. The following list, compiled in this phase, shows at once the widespread nature of the organization. Workers in wood, carpenters, including cabinet makers, wheelwrights, builders of houses, builders of ships, and builders of vehicles of all sorts. Two, workers in metal, including gold and silver. Three, leather workers. Then workers in stone, ivory workers, workers fabricating hydraulic engines, bamboo workers, braziers, kasakar, jewelers, weavers, potters, oil millers, illapishaka, rush workers and basket makers, dyers, painters, corn dealers, dhamnika, cultivators, fisher folk, butchers, barbers and shampooers, garland makers and flower sellers, mariners and herdsmen, traders and including caravan traders, robbers and freebooters, horse police who guarded the caravans, money lenders, rope and mat makers, toddy drawers, tailors, flower makers. One interesting thing is they have mentioned even robbers as an occupation here. If you see,
Yeah, I think the,
do you have
they
any?
were robbing
Yeah.
somewhere else. I think the kingdom was using them for some covert actions. I think if we go by the conventional sense.
Or they might be listing out the possible guilds, and there might be a robber guild as well. So they're mentioning that just like that.
Possibly.
Yeah, I'll continue. Although the
Hmm.
actual number of guilds must have always far exceeded even this number, it is interesting to note that the idea of the conventional 18 guilds persisted down to modern times in India. 18 panas are actually mentioned in an inscription of the 17th century with Vyavaharika trader, Panchala, five sets of smiths working in five different metals, Kumbhalika, potters, Tantuvayin, weavers, Vastrabhedaka, dyers or tailors, Tilaghataka, oil millers, Kurantaka, shoemaker, Vastrarakshaka, tailors, Devanga Parikeleti, keepers of pack bullocks, Go-Rakshaka, cowherd, Kirata, hunter, Rajaka, washerman, and Kauraka, barbers. The compound Ganapana is used in the sense of communal and professional guilds, and these formed parts of the local assemblies. The paucity of materials makes it impossible to trace the history of the above guilds in detail. We can only hope to describe the general course of their development during the successive periods of Indian history. Yeah, so that was the end of this section. Do you have any thoughts to share on this?
I think we take very lightly the power of guilds during the ancient times. They were much more powerful than the I think whole caste sections of India because they hold the labor, the artisans and all those things. They hold the monopoly on that, so they can topple a kingdom if guilds are not managed
Yes.
properly by the king.
And as we can see, they are also quite sophisticated that they had a number of earlier we saw mention of 500 robbers in one guild. So uh, such a large number of
Hmm.
people in each guild would mean they have a lot of people working in different levels of the same
Yeah,
job.
they would also have hierarchy there. So they would have a structure of how the guild works because more
Yes.
people you have,
Probably like some
the more
executives are
complex
there.
the situation becomes. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah,
And more business and more in general, lot is made.
yeah, yeah. That they would also be able to exert more influence if they have more members, and I think the more structured they are, the easier for them to function as a guild.
Yes, yes. So I'll continue with the next part. Guilds in the Jataka period. Regarding the earliest period represented by the Jataka stories, 7th and 6th century BC, the subject had a clear difference so far as organization is concerned between the traders and the merchants on one side and the artisans on the other. As regards the former, the hereditary families pursuing certain branches of trade no doubt formed themselves into corporation with a Jataka at its head, but there is nothing in the Jatakas to show that there was a highly developed organization among them. Far different was, however, the case with artisans. Here, the heredity of the profession was a more marked feature than in the case of the traders and merchants. The son was apprenticed to the craft of his father from his early youth, and the manual skill and talent for a particular industry was thus an inheritance of the family from generation to generation. The adoption of by an artisan of any occupation other than his hereditary one has never been mentioned in the Jatakas, while they contain frequent reference to the son of an artisan following the occupation of his father. The localization of industry was another important factor in this respect. Streets, in particular quarters in a town, and even whole villages were inhabited by one and the same class of artisans. These villages were sometimes quite large. The Mahavadhakigamo, for instance, consisted of 1,000 families of dealers in wood, and the Kamaragamo the same number of smiths' huts. Lastly, there was the institution of Jataka, also among the artisans. These three circumstances, viz., the heredity of profession, the localization of different branches of industry, and the institution of Jataka, appear to Richard Fick to be conclusive evidence for the existence of an organization that may be fairly compared with the guilds of the Middle Age in Europe. Yeah, that was one interesting thing.
If the production was going on an industrial scale, because if in those times, if you have that many artisans, you are producing on an industrial scale, so you
Yeah,
would be
they
doing
might
a
need
lot
them to build
any other
palaces,
company.
bridges, huge things.
Yes, yes.
Your voice
Yes,
got
like
cut. Can you repeat?
Hmm. Nothing. I said
we,
nothing. Just continue.
yeah, I think
Okay.
Nina, this is something very interesting. Guys, am I audible correctly? Do let me know if the audio is correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. Correct. We know from the fact that Bharat and China were one of the biggest economies in the ancient era, and with some of the estimates saying that okay, Bharat had almost 35 to 40% of the global economy was produced in Bharat itself. Mm. Bharat, including not only the current Bharat, but I think it included the parts of Bhutan, Nepal, and other areas as well. So when you are producing and providing services as 40% of the global economy itself, so it is bound that you need to have industrial scale production mechanisms, processes, funding for this to happen. And we know for the fact that Sanjay Sanyal, he spoke about of these things in his book, The Ocean of Churn, and many of his books. That temples were one of the temples were the banks of ancient India. They were the repository of knowledge. They were like gurukuls. They would teach people. They would teach from astronomy to mathematics to scriptures to Vedanta. They were teaching philosophy. So in this whole economy that we are talking about, the author is talking about the ancient economy, ancient corporate life. So temples were a kind of focal point, which served as a temple, which served as a schooling system, which served as a university, and it was a kind of focal point of social life itself. And as they were lending money to uh, early money to traders to do trade, I think they also facilitated this trade. So it became like a gigantic economic machine which India was in the ancient era. Yeah, Nina.
Yes, I agree. But the mention to temple basically starts coming more later. In this part, usually it's more about the economic organization of the artisans among themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a
Hmm.
early, it's a very early period, but like at that time we don't have the data that how,
Yes,
but in the Gupta period and Mauryan period, we see
right,
the
right.
flourishment of Indian economy. And see, it's quite correct. We all know that if you want to build a gigantic factory, you cannot build a factory without money, and somebody has to lend the money to you. So the mechanism of the liquidity flow of money, where artisans, where tradesmen, where manufacturers all have to come together, and you need to get a system. So we see that correct, this complex system of interweaving system was already present in India in the early stages of ancient history.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, go ahead with the read.
Will I continue then?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead, continue. And we also have Rishi with us. So Rishi, if you want to speak something, you can just unmute yourself and you can speak.
Namaste to all, and thank you Dada, for inviting me in this. So, uh, I had this question in my mind right now regarding the guilds. So, what do you think was the rate of innovation? So, right now, many of the modernists tend to criticize the early systems as so-called not very innovative in their scope of work, I guess. So, what do you think? I mean, India was so amazing at being rich at that time. So maybe it wasn't that bad at innovating itself, right?
Very interesting question. So correct. So like if you are, let's say, if I'm assuming that India was a 30 to 40% of the global economy, it means they were producing products, they were producing goods, and they were trading with other regions. So we know from various sources, including books on Sanjeev Sanyal, including books by R.C. Majumdar and others who wrote that the Indian coinage was found uh, in China, in Europe, in Rome, in Greece. Okay, so the tradesmen were actually going there in Southeast Asia and many other places. Even I think in Mesopotamia they found some IVC IVC seals. Okay, so in that context, I cannot fathom that you don't have innovation as a product as a service at the ancient times, and you become 30-40% of the global economy. So innovation has to be there. Where correct. So if a tradesman is selling one kind of goods, okay, and then the tradesman has to improve the product, and when he goes to again to sell to that person, they will want something new. Correct. You will not buy a mobile phone with the same brand, same design, same specs for next 5 years or 10 years. You want something new improvement done on your mobile phone. So it's a human nature. Correct? It's a human nature to ask for improvement. So in that context, innovation as we see now, it may not be like that, but innovation as part of to upgrade services, upgrade, create new products, that would have to be there to facilitate this global trade which is happening, because it's human nature and human nature hasn't changed. We want something new, we want something better every time when we are paying money for this. So I think it should
Yes.
So
be
true.
part of it.
Hmm.
Can I
Right.
add a
So
point to this?
The
also,
only thing I would,
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
hmm, I would only add the thing this the rate of innovation would have been slower, but the innovation
Hmm.
would have been there because the
Obviously.
times we live in are very unusual because the rate of
Hmm.
innovation
Hmm.
is so fast that we don't
Hmm.
understand that for thousands of
Hmm.
years there have not been anything new invented in the warfare only. The warfare,
Hmm.
the tactics of warfare,
Hmm.
it would take uh, the times of thousands of years to invent new techniques. So the innovation rate of innovation would have been slow, but the innovation would have been there definitely.
And yes, yes, and innovation is correct. Innovation is like human nature, correct? Like even example, correct. If I am going to clean my place, okay, every day, so I will not do it the same way. I will try to find, okay, if I'm going to clean, let's say in 5 minutes my place or my table itself, I'll find a new way to, like, let's say if I can do it in 2 minutes. So like we are also innovating. Like we don't actually realize that, okay, when we are making tea, sometimes I will like keep the water a little bit more boiling. I'll put the tea a little bit later leaves. So I will always be innovative. So we are also doing innovation. So everybody us actually is an innovator, because if you are going to market to buy some vegetables, you will see, okay, this route is longer, let's try the shorter route. You will find one more route. and you might reach there 5 minutes earlier to save time. So innovation is part of human nature. We are doing it unconsciously without saying it's innovation, but we always try to improve things. Innovation is about improving what we existing had and try to make it better. Correct? That's how innovation works.
True, true, true. Nina, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I had a point that innovation basically you cannot restrict it to say physical technology as well. It can be in the field of say education. So we were continually producing the best philosophical works, religious works in the ancient time. Then we also have the example of our temples, say like the Kailasha temple. That clearly was built on the work of an innovation in construction technology. It wouldn't have been just built just like that. Then we have also innovations in say chemistry because there was, I believe, the iron pillar at Delhi in Mehrauli. That was something unprecedented for its time. So we have plenty of examples of innovation going on.
True, true, true.
Absolutely.
And also, I
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Maybe this is the last question, and I will stop. So, I think there is also this fact aspect, right? That innovation is driven by some sort of mentality. So, when the mentality of people is somewhat into, I guess, to remain in status quo or as such, then innovation at least slows down, I guess, and maybe a lot of change in mentality has happened, right, in last 200 years. So maybe that can also be the reason for change in the rate of innovation. Uh, all all of you can please comment on this.
Yeah, so innovation happens basically because of necessity. That is the whole point of it.
Yeah, Shekhar, you have something to say? Okay, Shekhar is on mute. Yes, Rishi. So yeah, actually, you raise a very pertinent point regarding the mentality or the mindset. But yeah, so mindset is not something which is static. So it evolves over time. Okay, so with the pace of communication we have, the innovation happens very fast. At in the ancient ages, the communication was not as smooth and as fast, as accessible as it's now. So rate would be less, and also you touched upon a very important aspect of not you but Nina, that necessity is the mother of all inventions, as the proverb goes. So whenever you are having a kind of a difficult, maybe a bit uncommon scenarios where you don't feel comfortable and you need to get something done in a very difficult circumstances, like so correct, in ancient times, still we have floods, we have earthquakes, we have many other natural disasters, and that would entail us to actually innovate new materials, new building techniques, so that in case a flood happens, in case earthquake happens, the building or the place is not damaged severely. So I think it's environment plays a very important role. Like if you are in a challenging environment, it would prod you to innovate irrespective of what your mindset is. But yes, if you and the mindset and the environment do play an important role. Like if you are in a very comfortable place, you don't feel the need for innovation. But if you are in a not so comfortable place, individually, personally, or as a society, we see Japan, correct? The classic example is Japan. Japan is at the permanent threat of earthquake which would destroy Japan completely in 1 minute. Okay, we have seen the Fukushima disaster which happened, where the nuclear reactor was damaged, and it and it created a lot of problem. So this threat of being devastated by earthquake has prompted Japan to create a kind of mindset where they have to excel at building roads, at building construction, building process, building material. That today they are the like leaders in that context. So this environment where they live and the constant threat of being wiped out by one single earthquake and tsunami has created a kind of mindset where they have excelled at many things which we think may be impossible. Yeah, Rishi.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have another point in my mind, but I will stop right now. Let
No, you
the
can go
good
ahead.
reading
Go ahead. Go ahead.
continue.
No, no, go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
No,
We
no,
will
no.
keep this part.
I think let Nina read. I guess. No?
Okay.
I will speak on it. No, no worries. No worries.
No issues. No issues. Yeah, Ninder, go ahead reading, and then
You can continue.
Rishi, others have any comments, they can unmute and just say. Okay, go ahead, Nina.
Yeah, yeah, they can ask the questions as we continue.
Sure.
Yeah. So some of the Jataka stories throw a further interesting sidelight upon the organization of guilds. We learn from the Samudra Vanija Jataka that there stood near Varanasi a great town of carpenters containing 1,000 families. But among these 1,000 families, there were two master workmen, each at the head of 500 of them. On one occasion, they left the town and settled with their families in an island. The story shows the mobility of the guilds, which is testified to by inscriptions of a later period. It also proves that there was sometimes more than one organization of the same class of craftsmen in the same locality. One might think that the double organization was due merely due to the large number of craftsmen, but the Jataka stories preserve instances of 1,000 men living under a single organization. It appears that sometimes the office of the alderman was hereditary, for we are told that when a master mariner died, his son became the head of the mariners. The importance of these guild organizations is conspicuously proved by the fact that the head of guilds sometimes held high posts in the state and were favorites of the king, rich and of great substance. Reference is also made to the quarrel and rivalry between these noblemen, and the introductory episodes to Jatakas contain interesting stories about the way in which the great Buddha sometimes reconciled them. Possibly, such quarrels were not infrequent, and necessity was felt of appointing a special tribunal to dispose of them. One of the Jataka stories refers to a state officer, the Bhandagarika, treasurer or superintendent of stores, whose office carried with it the judgeship of all the merchant guilds. We are expressly told that no such office had existed before, but that there was this office ever after. As already observed, two of the Jatakas refer to 18 guilds, and though the number must be taken as a purely conventional one, it clearly demonstrates the widespread organization of these institutions at this period. In both these Jataka stories, the royal procession on two important occasions is said to have included the 18 guilds, and this again testifies to the important place they occupied in the polity of ancient India. Yes, we can discuss on this part then. Shekhar or Rishi, did you have any points on this?
Uh, I thought maybe Shekhar could speak up first, then maybe I could come along after that. Mm, Shekhar.
I don't have much on thought on this actually. Other than that, the guilds are very powerful, and they can move wherever they choose to move.
Yes, and they had representatives in the government itself.
It reminds
Yeah,
also me
they would
of
have
the so-called.
yeah, they would have representation in the court, I think.
Yes,
Yes, and about that dispute. So this reminds me of the frequent disputes which happens between companies right now, right? So we get to see those things, and although we see that being resolved in the courts in modern era, it seems that at that time it was the what Bhandagara, some state officer of treasury who used to deal with these set of
uh,
problems.
and that
So it
Buddha himself reconciled it.
Yeah, that's the theme of the Jatakas always. But it seems that, like, I'm taking it in casual form, like, even if when like there was no Buddha, so maybe these officers, right? So
Yes,
treasurer or superintendent, those things. So,
I think
could we say that?
the hmm, आप कंटिन्यू कर लो
No,
अपना
no, तो बोल नहीं नहीं मैं
मेरे ख्याल
आई वांट टू टेक
मेरे ख्याल से हाँ तो ऑफिसर जो था ना उसका रोल था कि वो फियर क्रिएट करे इन गिल्ड्स के बीच में कि अगर तुम बाहर डिस्प्यूट सॉल्व नहीं करोगे तो ऑफिसर आके वो सॉल्व करेगा और उसके अंदर कुछ भी हो सकता है फिर दोनों का नुकसान हो सकता है उस हिसाब से मेरे ख्याल से
Yes, Shekhar
इंटरेस्टिंग
is right. Yeah, so correct.
थिंग
So it's a kind of like an ancient arbitration. Okay, so we can see correct. So like in India we had correct village panchayats. Okay, so like I think even 200 years before we had our panchayats, where the village elders would actually come and decide, and you will have a kind of a court where the both sides would give their argument, and the elder people, the most wise people, learned people of council would sit, and they will decide what will happen. So it's a kind of a like an arbitration which used to happen in India as a kind of a natural justice, because in that village everybody knows each other, what they do, where they live, what they do, how much they earn. So everybody knew each other, so it was a very efficient way of actually giving justice, because at a small village level you would not find somebody who is a poor and he says I am very rich, and he is rich says I am very poor. So because they will know that okay, this person is rich but he's saying I am poor. So in that way, the kind of arbitration that we see now as a like a law framework, and that would have also existed, that and it also it's there, correct. So even the trade, especially the trade communities, those who do business, they will have their own ways of actually arbitration. A lot of cases, business cases, uh, corporates are also, the famous case was correct, the Ambani family wealth distribution, and that was decided by Kokila Bain, the mother of Mukesh Ambani and Anil Ambani and the family. So she was the kind of arbitrator who would say, okay, who would get what. So this kind of family system, which was there actually, which is very efficient in many ways. Maybe right now, in this modern times, that may not be recreated, but it did existed. So like every kind of corporate structure we see now, in its crude form, in its ancient form, was there because India was the 30%, 40% of the world economy. So you need to have these mechanisms, these institutions, these processes built, so that disputes will arise. That is how business works. If you're doing business, somebody would do something which will not, you not like it. So disputes would be there, and it's natural. So now the institutions also would be built in on that part.
true, true,
Yeah,
true,
Shekhar.
and also oh,
शेखर, तुम कुछ बोलना है?
नहीं अभी तो कुछ नहीं है
Okay, Rishi.
yeah. So what I was reminded of that when you talked about Kokila Ben, that whole. um, that whole incident. So it also reminded me of the fact that such arbitrations, especially within families, when it happens, it's less violent and it's less like destructive in nature. Whereas right now, what happens is like families and relations get destroyed when it goes outside the family and when arbitration is taken from the courts or yeah, from the courts especially. Right, Dada?
Yes, you are right. But correct, the society has changed. Correct, people have changed. A lot of things have changed. So we might not have the same kind of structures, but we can learn from that. We can learn from that and create uh, processes, institutions which are more akin to our values, our dharmic values, our Indian values, our Bharatiya values. So the Nyaya Shastra, the Nyaya Shastra is one of the most brilliant legal document that has been created. Okay, so we can incorporate, which can be incorporated from Nyaya Shastra and other scriptures, other documentations, processes, and we can improve our. So uh, replacing the current system might not be the best solution, but incorporating those Indian values, Bharatiya values, and knowledge, the ancient knowledge that we had, and incorporate it into our law enforcement, into our courts, into our legal framework, legal policy, legal policy frameworks that will actually improve and make it much better, much more compatible with the way we live. Because right now we have a Victorian age lawfare, and that is copy pasted from the European context. But we don't think like Europeans. We don't eat like Europeans. The landscape is different. The Europe is barren, it is cold, so all things are there. So the environment, correct, environment plays a very important role. The way you dress, the way you eat, and the way you also do justice.
True, true. It actually reminds me of the famous Edmund Burke, his exposition on the East India Company's extreme rule in India. So he says that all institutions are, after all, reflections of a history of that land. So, if you transpose one set of institutions which actually are emerging out of a history in a very specific context to another, and try to exercise its power, then absolutely creates havoc in that society totally. So, and we are seeing that right now every time in India.
Yes, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with you. Yeah, Nina, go ahead. Let's continue the reading session.
Yes. So, so this is part four, development of the guild organization in the early Dharma Sutra period. We next come to the period represented by the early Dharma Sutras, 5th century BC to 3rd century BC. This would be verse 21 of the 11th chapter of the Gautama Dharma Sutra, quoted above, authorizes the cultivators, traders, herdsmen, moneylenders, and artisans to lay down rules for their respective classes, and we are further told that the king shall give the legal decision after having learned the state of affairs from those who in each class have authority to speak. This presents a further stage in the development of the guild organizations. The corporations of traders and artisans are now recognized by the Constitution as an important factor in the state and invested with the highly important power of making laws for themselves. Their spokesman, corresponding probably to the Jataka of the Jataka, is an important personage having the right to represent his class in the royal court. The extent of the influence which the guild exercised over its members in this period is best illustrated by the two disciplinary rules laid down in Vinaya Pitaka. According to one of them, the guild was entitled to arbitrate on certain occasions between its members and their wives, while according to the other, its sanction was necessary for the ordination of the wife of any of its members. Passage in the same canonical text leads us to infer that the guilds already possessed at this with this time some executive authority. Thus, it is enjoined that woman thief Tori should not be ordained as a nun without the sanction of the authorities concerned. Rajanam va sangham va ganam va pugam va senim va anapaloketva. The old commentator remarks upon this passage, Raja nama yatha raja anusasati raja apaloketabo seni nama yatha seni anusasati seni apaloketabo. This certainly refers to the executive and the judicial authority of the guild and places it on the same footing with that of the king and other political corporations. Yes. So, did any of you have any thoughts on this part?
The extra part of involvement of women in all of these affairs also is something interesting to note, right? So these are some of the things like we are targeted mostly by saying we kept women out of all the affairs of, especially secular affairs. So this actually busts those myths, right, Nader?
Yes, yes. I think in this case, the ordination of nuns means this might be in case of sanghas or some kind of religious organization.
True, true. I was like reminded of that passage that you read, like the wives of those business. I'm forgetting who were those like females, the female members of those guilds, right? So they were also involved in the arbitration and so on and so forth.
Yes,
Maybe
yes,
you can
they were
speak on
also
that more.
involved in. Yeah.
Mhm.
Upendra, did you have any comments on this?
Yes, yes. So I think this narrative and myth in ancient Indian society and Middle Ages, women were like prevented from taking part in the many of the secular or the religious affairs of the society is something which is actually not founded, because we know from our Vedic literature itself that women were scholars. Okay. And we also know from our history that women fought wars, women, I think uh, Rishi will tell me, Rishi will be able to tell better. That correct, the lady warrior who actually defeated Gauri, Muhammad Gauri, in one of the battles.
Nike Devi. Nike Devi.
Yeah, Nike. Yeah, so Nike Devi defeated one of the most feared warriors. Okay, a woman did it, and she was leading the warfare itself. She was leading the army. And we have in South we have many women warrior fighters who are actually leading the war and winning wars. So where this narrative comes from, I think it's that for last 200 years we have been fed a lot of propaganda by various European colonizers, and that has created this kind of narrative. But if we read, that's why our effort is to actually read the histories and also prod people to go ahead and read your own history until you know our real history, which is not being taught in institutions, not being discussed, not books are written on this, so that we have this narrative been going on. So when we rediscover our history, read our history, understand our history, our historical perspective, then we will know that these narratives are just a figment of imagination in so many ways.
True, true, so true, so true.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll continue with reading.
Yeah.
So, position of guild at the time of Kautilya. Kautilya's Arthashastra, which is now acknowledged by the general of scholars to have belonged to the period under review, throws much interesting light upon the guild organizations of this time. Thus, we are told that the superintendent of accounts had to regularly enter in prescribed registers the history of customs, professions, and transactions of the corporations, and three commissioners or three ministers enjoying the confidence of the guilds, were appointed to receive the deposits which could be taken back in times of distress. Special concessions were made regarding the lawsuits between trade guilds, and special privileges were accorded to a merchant belonging to a trade guild. The importance of the guilds in those days is further indicated by the fact that in an ideal scheme of a city, places are reserved for the residence of the guilds and corporations of workmen, and that the taxes paid by them are included among the most important sources of revenue. The village guilds were protected by a regulation that no guilds of any other kind other than local cooperative guilds shall find entrance into the village. The reputed wealth of guilds and the way in which they were sometimes exploited by unscrupulous kings may be gathered from the Machiavellian policy unfolded in um, Book 5, Chapter 2. We are told that in case a king finds himself in great financial trouble and needs money, he may employ a spy who would borrow from corporations, bar gold, or coin gold, and then allow himself to be robbed of it the same night. Kautilya also lays down certain specific rules regarding the guilds of laborers or day workers. They are to be granted certain special privileges. For example, a grace of 7 nights over and above the period agreed upon for fulfilling their engagement. The total earnings are to be equally divided among all the members of the guild, unless its usage dictated otherwise. A person leaving the guild after the work has commenced is to be punished with fines. Any person neglecting his proper share of work is to be excused for the first time, but if he persists in his bad conduct, he is to be thrown out of the guild. Again, if any member is guilty of a glaring offense, he is to be treated as a condemned criminal. It may not be unreasonably held that similar rules held good among guilds in general. The power and influence of guilds at this time may be readily inferred from passage at the point is seriously discussed whether the troubles caused by a guild or its leaders are more serious. Thornton is in favor of the latter because a leader backed up by support causes a person by injuring the life and property of others. A city may be colonized by a population consisting of organized bodies like guilds or one without any such organized bodies at all. The latter is preferred on the ground that the guilds and other organized bodies are intolerant of calamities and susceptible of anger and other passions. These and similar passages in Arthashastra hardly leave any doubt that the guilds were already an important factor in the state fabric in the 4th century BC. Yes. So, Rishi, did you have any thoughts on this part? Because I compared to an organized body. So this could be seen as a say he is probably expecting that the corporate body might exploit the area in a way for its own profits or something.
Yeah. So this actually reminds uh, of certain organizations right now, like multinational companies who are like involved in these sort of activities, right? So causing troubles based on their, of course, they are companies, so they have a different makeup altogether. But yeah, the kind of troubles which they are making right now, it's a bit similar, right?
Yes, and also,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can
See,
continue that.
one more thing is important that we should be remembering is that uh, there has been a kind of mindset which was created in, I think, post-industrial revolution. Okay, when the steam engine was invented, and then you had the second industrial revolution with the oil being the primary fuel from whether there is coal to oil. So there is a kind of a mindset which is built that okay, we for last 200 years we did everything, and the previous generation, the pre-industrial civilizations were all like ragtag people who did not know industry, did not know culture. So everything is now invention of last 200 years. And the truth is, it is not the case. Civilizations, cultures build on each other. So we had the Greeks, we had the Romans. So as correct as many people mentioned that the American empire is a reflection, a continuation of the Roman Empire, uh, from the British. So the British inherited the Roman Empire in many aspects, not directly. And the British Empire, when it collapsed, it was power was transferred, or it got transported as the American Empire. So it's a continuation. So this industrial post-industrial revolution perspective, that everything was backward, there was no technology in those ancient times, is something which is absolutely wrong. And the primary example is the uh, rust-proof iron pillar sitting in Delhi, and it was produced in somewhere in Madhya Pradesh currently. So in industrial times, we produce steel, which does get rust, but that steel which is there, the iron pillar is there, it is still rust free, and people can't fathom out how it was done. So this conception that everything good was a byproduct product of our modern civilization is something which is unfounded. There are many things which the pace of technology, the pace of innovation has increased. That's something which is we can't ignore. But the ancient people, the ancient civilizations did not have any culture, technology, innovation, techniques, is certainly cannot be taken as for the truth. It's altered to the truth that they had technology. And we take the last example. The Nalanda library had so many books that people say it burned for 3 to 6 months. So people were writing books,
Yes,
people were scholars, people were reading, innovating, they were writing poetry. So everything was there. And we assume that okay, they were only writing poetry. In ancient times, we also discussed in our stream with the Hindu Vichadhara madam, that in ancient times you could not, the writing instrument and writing material was very expensive. It was not very like, until the invention of paper, and paper itself was not a very cheap commodity at that time. So so we use the shruti as a technique to remember and pass on the knowledge. So from mathematics to astronomy to weather prediction, everything was passed down as poetry, because that is the most efficient way of passing down, because you did not had the durable material to write it down and pass it on to the next generation. So there might not be material evidence that they had all these things, because it was passed down as as poetry, okay, as shruti, and people just dismiss it that it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, Janina, go ahead. If somebody else want to speak, yeah, Rishi, go
yes.
ahead.
Let Nina speak. Let Nina speak.
Okay, go ahead, Nina.
Yeah, so I agree totally with that. And along with that, I also wanted to take up another point in the we just saw it in the book itself, is the rules regarding laborers. So, so they have, we can see that they are granted certain privileges. For example, after completing the engagement, they get a grace of 7 nights over, and and they are supposed to equally divide it among all members. So it was quite well organized, and most people had dignity in how they work. It is unlike how many portray the past as time when people were oppressed and so on, right?
True, true, true. So it's so like we cannot even imagine, given the education we are having right now, to even think that there would be vacations. Like right, so here the passage says grace of 7 day, 7 nights. Right, so after some great project has been done, the laborers get to have vacations. Right now we get it. Okay, yeah. So it may be there, but uh, yeah, reading history books in colleges and so on, people cannot even imagine that at all.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, go ahead, Nina.
Absolutely.
We'll read the last portion for this stream today, and then we will discuss your points, and then we will end the stream. It's very good that we are reading this. Is
Okay, sure.
very interesting discussion we are having.
Yes. So it appears clearly from scattered references in Kautilya's Arthashastra that the guilds in those days were also great military powers. Thus, in Book 9, Chapter 2, Kautilya all includes Srinivala among the various classes of troops which the king might possess. It was sometimes quite insufficient both for defensive as well as for offensive purposes, and when the enemy's army consisted mostly of this class of soldiers, the king had also to enlist them in his service. Again in Book 5, Chapter 3, dealing with subsistence to government servants, the pay of Shreni Mukhyas, chief of guilds, is set down as equal to the chief of elephants, horses, and chariots. And then follows the remark: the amount would suffice for having a good following in their own communities. Further, in Book 7, Chapter 16, Kautilya mentions among the neighboring hostile party a piece of land that is constantly under troubles from an enemy, evidently for keeping them too busy to interfere in the affairs of a state. In Book 7, Chapter 1, the Sreni is classed along with soldiers as means to repel the invasion of the enemy. Kautilya also refers to a class of Kshatriya guilds which lived both upon trade and war. Kamboja, Surashtra, Kshatriya Shrenyaadayo, Varta, Shastropadi So evidently these were special kinds of guilds and were mostly to be found in Kamboja and Surashtra countries. That the guilds adopted military profession might at
Yeah,
first
Nina.
sight
So
appear very
Nina,
strange.
Nina, just scroll up a little bit. So the Cambodia is currently Cambodia. So just for people who are, so Cambodia is
I
modern
think
day
no, no,
Cambodia.
Cambodia is far northwest, Afghanistan side. Uh, Cambodia is also Cambodia, but this original one was that side.
Okay, so there are two Cambodias. So correct,
Uh,
the mention of Cambodia there.
दादा तब है ना कंबोडिया का वो नहीं था कोई मतलब वो बनी नहीं थी ये जब
Yeah,
की
yeah.
बात कर रहे हैं
Okay,
Cambodia,
okay, yeah, but
yeah,
understand. But the Cambodia, this reference that we see in in multiple documentations. So like the names are very similar. So
yes,
Okay,
original. I
so
think
uh,
Cambodia is named after this area.
okay, Rishi, go ahead. Rishi has some much better knowledge on
yeah,
this. So Rishi.
Yes, yes.
so right now I was searching, so got to know that there are two Cambodias. So right now I think this is Cambodia, right? So K
Yeah,
A
Cambodia.
something about
Yeah,
Hmm.
Cambodia.
Cambodia. So I got to know that it's like the region northeastern Afghanistan and northern Pakistan. So basically, current Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
Hmm.
So I
Got it,
guess
got
they
it.
are still continuing to do that. They have not yet ended those what Kautilya actually mentioned. They are still continuing in that trade of being a
Yes.
fighter.
Yes, yes. Yeah, go ahead, Nina. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I think Surashtra is Saurashtra in Gujarat. That is very clear.
Mm. True, true, true.
That guilds adopted military profession might be at first sight appear very strange, but the following considerations not only support the view, prove the continuance of this state of things in later periods. Some verses in the Mahabharata enjoin upon a king to avail himself of a Shrenivala, which is said to be equal in importance to hired soldiers, Brittam. The Ramayana also refers to Sayodha Shreni, while the military aspects of the guild is clearly evident from the Mandaswar inscription. In Narada Smriti, we are told, with reference to guilds and other associations, that confederacy in secret resort to arms without due causes and mutual attacks will not be tolerated by the king. There can be no question that Srinivala refers to a class of fighting forces, for, as already observed, Kautilya tells us that they were sometimes quite sufficient both for defensive as well as for offensive purposes. But even conceding this, there is no room for differences of opinion. R. Shamashastri has translated the term as corporation of soldiers, thereby um, ignoring the idea of guild. Professor Dr. B.R. Bhandarkar uh, takes it to mean soldiers maintained by the guild. I am disposed, however, to look for the true explanation of the term in the Kshatriya Shreni of Kautilya referred to above. This seems to me to refer to a class of guilds which followed some industrial art and carried on military profession at one and the same time. That this is quite probable is proved beyond all doubt by the Mandsaur inscription, to which detailed reference will be made later. We learn from this interesting record that some members of the Silk Weavers Guild took to arms, and these martial spirits, valorous in battle, even today, affect by force the destruction of their enemies. It is not a little curious that the Silk Weavers Guild originally belonged to the Lat province, just on the border of the Surashtra country, which
Yeah,
but
I
Nina,
whatever
think
views
silk
complete.
may be correct.
weavers,
How many?
Yes.
they
Yeah.
are talking about
So one thing, Nina,
Saurashtra region.
how many pages we have? How many pages we have? So we'll see whether we'll stop or
Yeah,
we'll
I'm
continue.
checking. I'm just checking.
Hmm.
Uh,
I think they are talking about
basically, two more
Saurashtra.
pages.
Yeah, Nina, go ahead. Nina, go ahead.
We have two more pages.
Okay, two more pages, correct.
Hmm.
Let's do one thing. Let's stop here. We will finish these two pages later. Okay. So yeah. So we will.
No,
I think it's a very
actually,
interesting. Hmm.
actually, it is ending here only. Okay, it is
Okay,
just
then go ahead. Go ahead, read
this
it.
page
Then go
only.
and read it. Then we will
Two more
discuss the
paragraphs.
points. Yeah. Then go ahead, read it.
Yes,
Read. Then we will
it
see
should
the
take
points.
not less than 2-3 minutes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but whatever view may be correct, the interesting fact remains that in addition to their proper activities, some of the ancient guilds also possessed military resources of no mean worth, and they played no insignificant part in the internal polity of ancient India. This naturally reminds us of the Italian guilds of Middle Ages. The Kshatriya Shrenis mentioned by Kautilya were active back in at least in southern India, and a good example is furnished by the Velai Kar of the temple of various works and is frequently referred to Tanjore inscriptions of the Chola kings Rajaraja and Rajendra Chola as a part of the name of the different regiments composing the Chola army. They also migrated to Ceylon and were employed by as mercenaries by Sinhalese kings at this period. We learn from an inscription at Polanaruva that a chief named Devasena had constructed a relic temple for the sacred tooth of Jinnah at the command of King Vijayabahu and invoked the members of the Velaikar army to protect it. These assembled together, bringing with them their leaders, and took upon themselves the responsibility of maintaining the temple and protecting its property. By way of remuneration, one valley of land was assigned to each individual member, and they agreed thus: we protect the villages belonging to the temple, its servants, properties, and devotees, even though in doing this we lose ourselves or otherwise suffer. We provide for all the requirements of the temple so long as our community continues to exist, repairing such parts of the temples as gets dilapidated in course of time, and we get this our contract, which is attested by us, engraved on stone and copper, so that it may last as long as the moon and the sun endure. That was the end.
Amazing.
Yes, especially this final part where they write on the copper inscription.
That part.
Yeah, Shekhar, you
So
were talking
this,
about the. Yeah, Shekhar was talking about that weavers, the silk weavers in Saurashtra. So yeah, go ahead and that. That's an interesting
Yeah,
topic.
ये काफी पुरानी बात है। आई थिंक सौराष्ट्र में काफी सारे जो वीवर्स गिल्ड थे, आई थिंक काफी पुराने थे फ्रॉम एंशियंट टाइम्स। वो काफी जगह माइग्रेट भी हुए थे। आई थिंक तमिलनाडु में गए थे, कर्नाटका में गए थे, महाराष्ट्र में भी। आपको अभी भी सौराष्ट्री बोलते हुए पीपल मिल जाएंगे, आई थिंक बैंगलोर में और चेन्नई में और वहाँ पे। तो ये काफी
हाँ, वो
पुराना जो
तांजोर में
ये
नहीं।
सिल्क वीविंग का काम है ना वहाँ पे, यहाँ से। क्या हुआ?
तांजोर में काफी मिलते हैं सौराष्ट्र बोलने वाले।
हाँ, हाँ। हाँ, वो ये इन्वेजन्स की वजह से माइग्रेट हुए थे और कुछ किंग्स ने बुलाया था वहाँ पे माइग्रेट करने के लिए, तो दोनों केस थे।
हाँ,
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. Correct that there are Saurashtra. I think they correct. There's a dialect of Gujarati that is spoken in correct in Saurashtra. It's different from the spoken Gujarati in different
काठियावाड़ी
area.
काठियावाड़ी आप बोल सकते
Kathiawar.
हो उसको। सौराष्ट्र,
Okay,
हाँ,
okay.
काठियावाड़ी बोलते हैं उसको।
Yeah, so correct. It's a different region altogether. It's like a separate entity geographically in terms of Gujarat.
The Saurashtra Peninsula, no, the lower part of the upper part is Kutch, and the lower peninsula is Saurashtra. The Gujarat
Oh,
have two peninsula, no?
so I think they have their own kinds of food, different kind of culture, and the language that
Yeah,
is spoken is called Kathiawadi. So it's similar to Gujarati. It's
yeah.
like you can understand like it would be similar to Gujarati as a
हाँ,
kind of
हाँ, उसको
dialect.
समझ सकते हो आप। गुजराती है ना, वो समझ सकते हैं
हाँ.
आपको, उसको काठियावाड़ी समझ सकता है। तो थोड़ा
Okay.
थोड़ा मतलब थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट होता है वो, बाहर वाला
Hmm.
नहीं समझ सकते, पर गुजराती समझ सकते हैं उसको। ठीक है ना? तो
It's
उनका
a kind
खाना
of
भी होता है, आप मतलब अगर आप रेस्टोरेंट में
hmm.
जाओगे गुजरात में, तो उनका
Hmm.
स्पेशल
Hmm.
होता है कि काठियावाड़ी खाना, ठीक है? काठियावाड़ी
Hmm.
ड्रेस, ठीक है? काठियावाड़ी बोली होती है फिल्म की, तो
Hmm.
इस हिसाब
Hmm.
से।
Hmm.
तो उनको सौराष्ट्रन्स
Right.
बोलते हैं यहाँ पे, मतलब बेसिकली
Correct.
होते
Correct.
हैं
Because
गुजराती, बस मतलब उस पार्ट में रह रहे हैं वो लोग इसलिए।
yeah, yeah, and that is quite common. Correct. Even in correct Orissa, like Orissa, the Odia spoken in various districts are different. So people from one district would identify one more individual from another district by the kind of accent he has when he speaks Oriya. And same happens with actually with West Bengal. So the Birbhum or that area people, the way they speak Bangla is different from the way they speak in North East Dinajpur or Midnapur. So the dialects exists as correct. We know that every 3 kilometers the language actually changes. It becomes a kind of a dialect itself. The words, the way pronounced, the way they are used, means changes.
yes.
Interesting.
हम्म।
Yeah, Rishi.
Yeah, so I had this question from Shekhar actually. So Shekhar in Nenar just read right now. So there was this land called Lat Desh near Saurashtra. So is there anything like any remembrance of that area? I was like trying to find that which area is being talked about in this book by R.C. Majumdar.
मैंने चेक नहीं किया, मुझे चेक करना पड़ेगा एक्चुअली में, इसका इतना मतलब मैंने
I know
सुना नहीं है।
which. Uh,
हाँ, बोलो।
I know which area Lat is. It's basically inside of Gujarat, so where Ahmedabad and other areas come. It is the non-coastal area.
Oh, okay. Hmm. So
फिर इनर गुजरात होगा आई थिंक,
like
नॉर्थ जो आई थिंक
Inner
जो
Gujarat, correct.
सदर्न राजस्थान और जो वेस्टर्न एमपी के साथ लगता है ना, उसको आप बोल सकते हो उसको, जो जो
uh,
बेसिकली जो
Shekhar.
थिंक हम्म
Yeah,
हाँ बोलो।
so is that part like the Anahilwada and Patan, those areas?
हाँ हाँ, पाटन है उधर, पाटन आई
Yeah,
थिंक थोड़ा ऊपर
Ahmedabad,
पड़ जाता है,
Patan, all
पाटन के ऊपर
those
ही
Jain areas.
अहमदाबाद के ऊपर है पाटन, थोड़ा सा नॉर्थ में जाओगे ना अहमदाबाद से तो पाटन आ जाता है, तो महसाना और पाटन और
Basically,
वो सब आ जाता है।
inland Gujarat बोल रहे.
हाँ हाँ, मतलब
Acha, acha.
अब क्या होता है कि आप ये जो रिफाइनरी है ना इसकी थिंक रिलायंस की, तो उधर जाओगे ना आप उस पे राजकोट टाइप, तो उधर क्या वो बीच में सी छोटी सी सी पड़ती है, जो मुंद्रा पोर्ट है ना, तो उधर छोटी सी सी पड़ती है, तो उससे थोड़ा आगे जाओगे ना तो ये पाटन और वो सब आएगा, थोड़ा इनलैंड वहां से जाओगे, या तो वहां से ईस्ट में जाओ या फिर अहमदाबाद से नॉर्थ में जाओ, तो वो रीजन उसको नॉर्थ गुजरात बोलते हैं, वो बहुत सिमिलर है राजस्थान से।
Okay, okay. So right now, Nina, all of you can comment actually. So right now we read uh, all about the guilds of Kshatriyas, right? So warrior guilds who were like
Correct.
traveling uh, everywhere and like were in the business of doing. Were they also making weapons and stuff? I was just trying to check that, so I couldn't get it. Niner, can you comment on that, or
I didn't see any
Dada and
mention of that.
Shekhar?
Okay, weapon on the weapons part. Actually, I do not have the exact document, but the area that we see, correct, in West Bengal. Okay, the Birbhum area and that area. I may be not exactly correct, but that area was actually in ancient times was known as a like a making weapons. So on the weapon part, if you see, correct, so you have this Ramdao. The Ramdao is a very
Yes, yes.
well-known axe, okay, which is used in Bali Pratha. So correct, Ramdao is a kind of a weapon in ancient times. Correct, it was a like a razor sharp weapon made of metals to actually. And one more thing is very important. You are talking about this technology and innovation. Metal has always been a kind of a barometer of how technologically advanced you are. Okay, how you can forge metal, create new variants, create weapons. So you need the knowledge of chemistry, you need the knowledge of industrial processes to actually produce weapons from metals. Like first to extract the metal, and then mold the metal, process the metal to create various tools including tools of warfare. So you, when Rishi mentioned the innovation and industrial scale production and other things, so if you see the kind of, see, and warfare was a kind of like a normal thing in those times. Okay, so in ancient times, warfare was normal. One kingdom invading another kingdom was not something which is surprising. Okay, that's a normal behavior people was, and to fight wars you would need tools of warfare. So in that way, I'll again go back to one more book reading we did. People can go back and check. That's the strategic culture of ancient India. Okay, of ancient warfare by G.D. Bakshi, where the author talks about the four frontal wars which were taking place in Mahabharata specifically. So without industrial scale production, without innovation, without technology, without knowledge, you cannot have these kinds of incidents which are described.
mm,
And we see now the evidence of the chariot being discovered, okay, uh, for IVC civilizations. So I think if you can connect the dots logically, you will see that the ancient societies were not more very different from what we live today. Today we have Halliburton. Today we have a lot of military contractors in America who are billion-dollar enterprises. And what do? They fight wars for countries. They fight wars for corporations. Same way you had Kshatriya guilds who were just hired mercenaries. Anybody could pay them money and they will
Yeah.
fight for them. So what's the difference about how it's different?
I
Yeah.
I think Rishi's
uh,
question was that
it's
whether the same warriors were actually manufacturing or not, but I didn't see any
No,
reference
so
of
no,
that.
no.
I
Warriors
think
would not manufacture,
how,
but they would
yeah, yeah,
need correct
they'll buy
somebody
it
would.
from some other guild,
Hmm,
basically,
hmm.
who will actually manufacture.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
ऋषि
So
दादा
maybe all of हाँ हाँ बोलो बोलो
इसमें एक है वो पूछा था वो LAT लाट है या LATA लाट है
LAT LAT वो तो LAT बोल रहे हैं
तो
ना
LAT,
LAT है
LAT
ये
होगा
तो
फिर वो जो है ना वो एरिया
अच्छा अच्छा
इसमें आता है आई थिंक साउथ गुजरात में आता है वो ये माही जो रिवर
ओ
है और नीचे से नर्मदा आती है उसके बीच में जो सूरत के जस्ट ऊपर वाला एरिया है ना जो
अच्छा
वो
अच्छा
उधर
अच्छा
आता है हाँ हाँ वो
इज
नॉर्थ
दैट
गुजरात में
नियर
नहीं आता
बड़ौदा बड़ौदा के पास है
हाँ अब बड़ौदा तो रुको नहीं बड़ौदा से काफी नीचे है वो
अच्छा 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 ओ
काफी
ओके
हाँ,
ओके
हाँ
महाराष्ट्र के
काफी नीचे
पास पे है।
आप सूरत है ना सूरत के आप अगर मैप में जाओगे ना
हम्म
सूरत के ऊपर आपको एक आई थिंक
तापी ना
क्या बोलते हैं उसको
तापी
नदी मिलेगी नद, आपको
हम्म
मेन
हाँ,
समझना
काफी।
मतलब भारूच है ना भारूच एरिया उसके आसपास है
हाँ, हाँ।
अच्छा अच्छा
हाँ
अच्छा
तो वो
अच्छा
दो रिवर्स है ना
ओके
उसके आप चेक कर लेना माही रिवर जाती है वो नॉर्थ में और साउथ में नर्मदा या
ओ
तापी
फाइन
जाती है तो उन
ओके,
दोनों
ओके,
रिवर्स
ओके
के
ओके
बीच
ओके
में जो
आई विल चेक
लैंड है ना उसको लाट लाट देश बोल सकते हो आप
अच्छा 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 okay. So all three of you can please comment on this. So I was wondering, there are right now Banjaras, right, in Rajasthan and these areas. So I have heard that they were the ones who were like making weapons, and they still do this smelting and all those works till now, till date. Like right now, they don't make weapons so much, but they make कढ़ाई या वो सब जो कुकवेयर जो होता है वो
टूल्स
वो लोग बनाते हैं अभी वो बेचते हैं so
हाँ हाँ हाँ
I was
हाँ
like thinking were they like kshatriyas so you all clarified that they were not kshatriyas right so they were not the ones fighting
I think they were artisans. I think the tool makers, the weapon makers who turned tool makers. The normal tool making started after. Uh, think they didn't. The process become the process of tool making become weapon making becomes industrialized. There's no use for them. So I think they shifted their profession from weapon making to tool making. I think, and even now
true.
they would go from village to village to sell their wares. I think they would barter for the most part. Like they would take clothes and stuff for the tools you would need.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Like I was wondering so uh,
Mm.
the remnants of
ये
these
गुजरात में भी
kshatriya
है
guilds अच्छा 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 ओहो
ये
ओके
गुजरात
ओके
में भी है हाँ आई
so
थिंक ये सिंध में भी था आई थिंक
तो
क्योंकि जो रीजन
ओहो
जो है ना इन तीनों का तो गुजरात सिंध और राजस्थान का ये बहुत ही सिमिलर है
हम्म
इनकी लैंग्वेज भी सिमिलर है और रहने का तरीका भी सिमिलर है ठीक है खान पान में ज्यादा फर्क नहीं है और तो वो आपको ये तीनों जगह मिल जाएंगे सिंध में सिंध में तो नहीं बचे अब कुछ पर गुजरात और राजस्थान में तो मिल जाता है आज भी काफी काफी
अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा
काफी
बांजारा?
मतलब फ्रिक्वेंट मिल जाएंगे ये रेयर केस नहीं है बंजारा
नहीं, बंजारा तो कर्नाटका तक मिलते हैं। मतलब काफी बड़ी रेंज है उनकी।
हाँ, हाँ। नहीं, पर ये जो बोल रहे हैं ना स्पेसिफिकली, ये बाहर इन्हीं की क्लैन के बाहर चले गए थे। जो ये है ना, क्या नाम है, जो यूरोप में कौन है वो, रोमा पीपल है ना,
हाँ,
ये
ओ,
वही थे,
हाँ
ये
रोमानियंस।
हाँ
बाहर
हाँ
चले
हाँ।
गए थे। तो ये
ओ
माइग्रेट हो गए थे
अच्छा।
वहां पे।
हाँ,
आई थिंक
करेक्ट।
आधे जो थे ना, आधे जो थे ये उधर गए थे सेंट्रल एशिया में, और ये मंगोल्स के साथ में उधर चले गए यूरोप में। तो आपको ये वही मिलते हैं जहाँ
ओके।
ईस्टर्न पार्ट में मिलते हैं ये लोग, यूरोप में, ये वेस्टर्न पार्ट में नहीं मिलते। मतलब बाद में माइग्रेट हो गए, पर
ओ
इनिशियली वो लोग ईस्टर्न पार्ट में ही थे।
अच्छा अच्छा। ओके।
हम्म।
So, like I was thinking when Nina was reading those about the guilds, so I was wondering who are the remnants left. So, uh, the land which was noted by Nina right now, so it was like Saurashtra and Cambodia, right? So, one of the Cambodias are the parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan. So, what clicked into me was that of Pathans and Sikhs, right? So, maybe they are the remnants of those. पर सौराष्ट्र में कौन है ये तो पता नहीं चल रहा मुझे अब।
आई थिंक द
सौराष्ट्र में
वंस इन
जो
सौराष्ट्र
सौराष्ट्र
वाज,
राजपूत है ना, वो होंगे।
हाँ, Raj,
सौराष्ट्र में
that's
जो
what
राजपूत है
Rajputs
ना,
are.
वो होंगे।
अच्छा
They became Gurjar
अच्छा अच्छा।
Pratihar, then Rajput spread all over.
ओ ओ
हम्म।
ओके ओके
तो
ओके। अच्छा अच्छा।
ये जो गुजरात और ये है ना राजस्थान, ये पूरा राजपूतों का वो इलाका है, आपको मिलेगा, हरियाणा तक मिल जाएगा आई थिंक। पंजाब में मिल जाएगा, आपका जो पंजाब एरिया है वो पूरा भी राजपूतों से भरा पड़ा था। तो
अच्छा
जो
ऐसा है।
हाँ,
उत्तर
ओ
हाँ,
प्रदेश, मध्य
हाँ, हाँ,
प्रदेश,
और
सब
पूरा
सब।
ये जो थे ना, क्या हुआ था, जो ये मुस्लिम्स बने ना, आई थिंक जो रूलर्स थे छोटे छोटे उसके पंजाब और उस रीजन में, तो ये कन्वर्टेड राजपूत से जो कन्वर्ट हो गए थे ना, वो थे।
ओ
जैसे मेवात के केस में जो हुआ था ना,
अच्छा।
तो वहां पे भी वही हुआ था ना कि जो राजपूत रहते थे वो ज्यादातर वहां पे, तो उनको मैसेकर करके उनको कन्वर्ट किया गया था। तो या ज्यादातर को मैसेकर कर
ओहो
दिया गया, तो जो
हाँ,
बचे थे
वो
उनको कन्वर्ट किया।
वेस्ट पंजाब में जो भी
हाँ,
एलिट्स है वो सब कन्वर्ट यही है।
हाँ, हाँ,
अच्छा।
हमको नाम मिलते हैं
ओ
ना वहाँ, हाँ, दो ही मिलते हैं मेन वहाँ पे। जो पंजाब रीजन है वहाँ, एक तो जट मिलेंगे आपको, और एक राजपूत मिलेंगे, ठीक है ना। तो ये इनकी
हाँ
एटर्नल
ओके।
दुश्मनी है, आप बोल सकते हो। और वहाँ पे एलिट्स हमेशा जाट ही रहेंगे, जाट या राजपूत ही रहेंगे। उनके आप अगर आप सरनेम भी देखो ना, कैसे चौधरी और वैसे सरनेम मिल जाएंगे। तो ये कन्वर्टेड ही थे सारे।
हाँ 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 हाँ। ओके ओके। So Nainer, then the Shrenis are still continuing, I guess, like kind of their remnants are continuing. Especially, I can get to see that in Pathans, especially.
हाँ
हाँ,
वो
बट
मर्सिनरी
दे
का
आर
काम
नॉट
कर रहे हैं ना अभी
अर्निंग
तो
लाइक
अफगानिस्तान वाले।
दैट।
हाँ, वो तो है। उनका वो आई थिंक जो लोकेशन था ना ट्रेड का, वो
वेरी
खत्म हो गया ना,
डिग्रेडेड
क्योंकि
फॉर्म ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन।
हाँ, हाँ,
Oh, right, right, right. Good point, good point. Oh, on the topic of innovation, something clicked into my mind, Dada and Nainer and Shekhar. So this will be my last point, and I'll end it. So another thing which came into my mind was that the rate of innovation also increases with like जब खुलापन होता है समाज में, like so like when the people in a country or in a landmass get to travel elsewhere and get to know people from other parts of the world, I guess. So like getting knowledges
हम्म,
from those parts and then comparing with themselves, I think that also creates a very good like great rate of innovation, I guess, within the landmass. So uh,
हाँ, बोल
I'm
सकते हैं
reminded of Europe,
क्योंकि
like यूरोप तो इनोवेटर बहुत बाद में, मतलब like with travels बने ना, like when they started traveling elsewhere when they were not like situated or closed off,
ये
और हम लोग
मैं
closed off हो
यूरोप
गए।
का क्या है दादा,
हम्म,
हाँ, नहीं, यूरोप का क्या कॉन्सिडेंस था, क्योंकि जो मंगोल्स ने इन्वेड किया था ना, तो हुआ क्या था कि जो ये इतना बड़ा फैला था ना जगह में, तो उन्होंने टेक्नोलॉजिकल एक्सचेंज कर दिया था अपने एम्पायर के अंदर। जो चाइनीज गन पाउडर है, जो चाइनीज जो यूज कर रहे थे उसको, कैनन स्कोर, वो सब ये लोग इधर लेके आ गए वेस्ट में, ठीक है। और यहाँ के जो ये जो कैसल तोड़ने के जो वेपन्स है, ट्रबुशे और वो सब, वो लोग वो चाइना लेके गए थे, ताकि वो वहां उनको हरा सके। तो इन्होंने इनकी वजह से उनको जब इन्होंने जो टेक्नोलॉजी वहाँ वेस्ट में लेके गए थे, तो इनके पास पहुँच गए थे यूरोपियंस ने, जब उन्होंने हराया था मंगोल्स को, तो ट्रांसफर हुआ था।
Okay, okay.
और इंडिया
Niner
के
and
केस में
Dada
भी
can maybe.
आपको मिल जाएगा कि
Shikhar to बोल.
नहीं, इंडिया के केस में जैसे हाँ, हमने जैसे ये जो क्या बोलते हैं, हमारा जो नेवल प्रेजेंस है ना इंडियन ओशन में, वो कम हुआ ना, ये आई थिंक 12th सेंचुरी के बाद में। तो आप देखो कि 12th
अरब्स के
सेंचुरी के
टाइम, जब
बाद से
अरब्स
हमारे पास में
स्प्रेड हुए पूरे।
वहाँ पे इनोवेशन कम हो गया हमारा। बेसिकली इनोवेशन जो था ना, वो पूरा एक तरह से बंद हो गया, क्योंकि जो ट्रैवलिंग थी ना, वो सेफ नहीं रही। ठीक है, आप इंडियन ओशन में ट्रैवल नहीं कर सकते थे, क्योंकि अरब पायरेट्स और आपको पायरेट्स बहुत मिलेंगे अरब ओरिजिन के, तो उसकी वजह से
True, true, true.
इनोवेशन तो
I was
मतलब
thinking of that only.
दूसरी कंट्रीज में जाना सेफ नहीं रहा।
Mhm. True, true. Like when we had like contacts with Romans and Greeks and Chinese and all of those guys, Persians, तब हमें मतलब golden age भी आ रहा था, like innovation was coming up. मेहरुली iron pillar भी तब बनता है. Like these sort of things. होयसलेश्वर का temples भी ऐसे मतलब like these are mind blowing things. So like I think mobility I guess is one of the key factors as well. To get a good in like rate of innovation अगर अच्छा होना होता है तो
Yes.
this is my last point I think yes. Dada maybe
I
you
had
can
one.
speak on this.
Yeah.
हाँ Ninar
Yeah,
बोल
Nina,
बोल.
go ahead. Nina, go ahead. Nina was saying something. Go ahead.
So Dada, you were talking earlier about the temple ecosystem, right? So in the
Yes.
last point, we see how the guild has completely like dedicated itself to protection of the temple only. So that can be taken as one example of how the temple ecosystem also works.
Yeah. See, uh, what happens generally that the human mind is geared towards making simpler assumptions rather than thinking about very complex issues. That's how, because our brain is the most expensive organ in the human body. It consumes about 20 odd percent of the energy consumption for a very to 20, for some gram of gray matter. Okay, so we as humans, okay, we will look for a very simple solution. Are you a good person or a bad person? Do you like me or not like me? Okay, we don't go into delve into detail why you don't like me, why you like me. Okay, all those things we don't avoid because we don't want to spend any energy thinking about all those things. We have other things to do. Same ways, the the 1,000 years where we have seen the invasions and reaction to those invasions from various corners, from Europeans to Islamic invaders. From sea, we had Portuguese, Dutch people came in. In the east, we
Yes.
had the Huns came in. Okay, so we have seen this invasions coming. Okay, as a society, as a society, as a civilization. Okay, you everybody goes through these ups and downs in their fortunes. So I remember one old, like elderly person when I was while working in some organization. He told that the area called Damdam, okay, in West Bengal, Kolkata. It's a kind of a suburb of Kolkata. He said that okay, Damdam once a time was a kind of a like glorious place, very prosperous in nature. Now it's in shambles. Okay. So this cycle of destruction, cycle of upliftment, cycle of prosperity, it will come and go. Okay, we humans live for only 70 or 100 years, but the civilizations have lasted for 5,000 years, 10,000 years. The Hindu civilization itself is we can't even count. Okay, the only civilization apart from Mayans, okay, who could count more than I think 1 lakh is our civilization. We have number systems counting at trillions, billions of years. Okay, no other civilization could even count beyond 100,000. So you can see the kind of breadth, the kind of innovation we had. And in correct, we have the Bhavishya Puran, we have other scriptures. We mention all these things that what will happen, uh, Kali Yuga, Treta Yuga, Sat Yuga. Okay, so all these things are already there. So if you evaluate it from your perspective, that okay, now right now we are in a not good shape, It doesn't mean we will be in bad shape for the eternity. It doesn't mean that we were in this shape for in our previous times. Sometimes you will come up, you will be very innovative, but the fall, so the correct, the rise and fall of any civilization is within itself. When the civilization becomes decadent, we have seen what happens to Roman civilization is a very testimony to what happens when a civilization becomes too rich, it becomes too powerful, it becomes sloppy, it spends more time enjoying things than preserving what they already have. And we see what happens to Romans. Same thing would have happened, correct? If you become prosperous, you become lazy. I'm not saying it's the by default rule, but that's how human behavior works. So the downfall and the upliftment, again, we see India now the fourth biggest economy. Okay, if you told anybody at in 1947 we were a basket case in so many ways, okay, as the famous Henry Kissinger mentioned, the basket case in case of Bangladesh. So we were a basket case in 1947. If you told somebody, even Indian, or even to a European, that in about 75 years Bharat will become the fourth largest economy, they would laugh at this. You are mad. You are a mad person. You don't know what you're talking about. So these cycles will go on. Okay, it's important for us to actually know our history so that we can know what went wrong, what was good, what was bad, and improve upon it and create a better future for ourselves. That's how we should be working. We should not be evaluating things from your subjective point of view. We should be evaluating everything from an objective point of view in terms of the literature, the history, okay, and whatever is written, whatever is, and a lot of the one of the most problem areas are there in the Indian historiography is oral history. We have a lot of oral history which is being lost. Okay, we did not had the habit of documenting things. That was a good or bad, I'm not going to pass a judgment on that. But a lot of our history is oral history, and that oral history in current juncture is not considered history, but they are testament to what happened. So those incidents which happened, the battles, the wars, they are passed down as poetry. Okay, so that is a real history. So that's why we call itihas. Okay, itihas is the right term when we talk about Bharatiya itihas. Okay, not history. History is something different. Is a The concept itself is in terms of Western civilization. In our context, it should be itihas, not history, because itihas consists of everything from oral history to written to inscriptions. Everything will put together. A lot of temples, as mentioned by Sanjeev Sanyal in many of his lectures in his books, that our history is written on the on the temples, on the murals that we had. The walls of temples are depicting the kings fighting wars, how much, who was the king, who was fighting, how many people were died, what happened. Now, because we did not conventionally, as per the historiographics of the Western civilization, we did not write it down in paper. It doesn't mean history doesn't exist. Our history is written in the walls of temples, and we as a civilization have to go and decipher it, read about it, and write about it. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Nina,
Yes, I
Rishi.
totally agree with your assessment of it.
Yeah, so last word to Rishi, and then Shekhar, and then Nina. Then we will end the stream for today.
Uh, it was a great experience today. So many things we got to know, even from the text and from the discussions, especially. And we can actually uh, plan, in fact. So, how can we actually do things for the future of this country? And it was a great experience for me in all totality. So, nothing more to say much.
Yeah, Shekhar.
I don't have much to say. It was a very interesting read, and I got to learn a lot more than I have known for some time.
Yes, and for people who want to actually buy the physical book as well, let me just actually search. I think the book is available in multiple platforms. Uh, Let me just search. Okay, Shekhar or Nina, you want to say something? Till I search for the book itself.
Okay, yes. So basically, it was quite an insightful passage into the workings of the economic system in ancient India and how corporations and basically guilds worked back then with society and what it also explains how what the roles of the guilds were in society and so on. So yeah, it was quite an interesting bit we read today.
Yes, and now actually I have got the web page. Let me just share my screen. So, so this is the book R.C. Majumdar, writer and author corporate life in ancient India. So this book is now out of stock. Okay, but you can order them on any other platform as well. It might be available. And if you want to buy the physical book, like a lot of people like to read the physical book. In case you do not want to buy the physical book, then the book is available without a copyright. Okay, so you can go to archive.com. You can go to this as well, Vivekananda Foundation. So this is the PDF. Let me just check once again.
That
So
was
the
the
PDF
archive,
is available
right?
archive and other places as well. Like if you don't go to archive, it's also available in Vivekananda Foundation as well. So vivekanandafoundation.org, you will get the scan copy. I think Nina, this copy is a little bit better actually. So this has a single page.
Actually,
This
that
is
one
from
is yellow and
yellowish.
this one is white, so on to read it, it's much easier.
But I think the scan is good here actually. The scan quality is good here. We'll see. We will see. Because if I see it's very prominently scanned, and so
Okay, yeah,
yellow
I
from
can maybe open it next time.
yeah. So we will also take the audience like because for me this quality is quite actually good. So if you see if I increase it, so
Oh,
so
yes,
the
yes,
quality of scan
you're
is
right.
good actually. Okay, so it will be easy for people to actually read on the screen itself. And because a single page, so it will be also easy to navigate. So we'll try to use this copy. Yeah, so if you want you can buy the book. It's available, or if you do not want to buy the book, you want to the e-read, you can find it in various platforms. So no money is required for this. So yeah, so thank you. Okay, anybody has anything to say before we say goodbye?
No, that was all.
Okay, so thank you everybody. Thank you for guests for coming. For thank you Nina for reading. So tomorrow we will be reading the next session on Maharanas, the warriors of Rajasthan. Okay, so do tune in tomorrow again. We will be streaming at 8 p.m. India time, where the Shekhar will be reading the Maharanas, continuing the read of Maharanas book. So we'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. And again, our podcast will start from Wednesday onwards. So we have a lined up podcast on various interesting topics from Wednesday till Thursday, till Sunday. So those who are watching, please do consider subscribe to the channel. To subscribe, and also if you like our program, do hit the like button so that we can get more guests to come on the show. So on that note, thank you. Jai Shri Ram. Vande Mataram.
Jai Shri Ram.